Hello there, thrill seekers. If Zazen is good for nothing, why do it at all? We're going to answer that question after 20 short seconds of I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. Alright, thrill seekers, that of course was the bass line from I Want You Back by the Jackson 5. I went and saw the Michael Jackson movie last week and I enjoyed it. I'm not a huge Michael Jackson fan, but the first record I ever owned, or at least one of the first records I ever owned, was a Jackson 5 Greatest Hits album that I got for a birthday present when I was a kid. I really dug the Jackson 5 back in those days and I liked their cartoons. Anyway, I got a comment on this here very video channel, and I want to read it to you because I want to respond to it on a video. So let's read the comment. It's a bit long, so I hope you'll bear with me. Let's see. Let's just skip he wishes me a prompt recovery as he knows that I've been recovering from a very serious illness. I'm still not quite recovered, but I'm on my way. And I'm going to skip that part and just get to the meat of the question. What I struggle with is not the fact that you suffer. Obviously, illness, fear, uncertainty, and pain are human realities, and I would not expect Zen or Zazen to make someone immune to them. That would be an absurd standard. But the more I listen to you, the more I find myself wondering what Zazen is actually supposed to do. You seem to struggle with ordinary human suffering in a way that appears broadly similar and to a similar degree as many other people. That's strange grammar, but we'll let it go. And if decades of practice do not at least meaningfully alter one's relationship to suffering, then I find it difficult to understand what the practice is delivering. I realize the Zen answer may be that this is precisely why Zen does not talk about these things in terms of goals, benefits, progress, or measurable results. But honestly, not talking about them creates the same effect in me. It makes me wonder even more what the point is. If the practice is neither supposed to be evaluated by its effects nor described in terms of what it changes, then from the outside it becomes very hard to distinguish from a religious claim that cannot be really tested or questioned. This is where I have difficulty with the repeated idea that Zazen has no point or should not be approached with a goal in mind. I understand that this may be central to Zen, but Buddhism itself seems deeply concerned with suffering and liberation from suffering. So if the practice is not meant to reduce suffering, clarify one's relationship to suffering, or produce some meaningful transformation, then I struggle to see how it fits with the broader Buddhist project. So my question is, after years of practice, what should one reasonably expect Zazen to change about one's relationship to suffering? And if the answer is nothing, or there is no point, then why should someone practice at all? Again, here my goal is not to insult you or put you on the spot, but it's a question that has been with me for some time. Okay, it's a reasonable question, and I'd like to see how I can answer it. I've been thinking about this for a few days, and I don't know if my thought process is really clarified, but we're going to find out as we go along. Okay, as I mentioned in my last video, I'm 62 years old. I have started to enjoy repeating that because nobody believes that I'm really that old, and maybe this is one of the benefits of Zazen, that you'll still look like you're 40 when you're 62. I don't know. But anyway, I'm 62, and I started doing Zazen. I don't know exactly the year. I was between 18 and 20 years old. It's not... because the class I took called Zen Buddhism at Kent State University in the early 80s was a non-credit course, because Kent State University in the early 80s did not believe you should get college credit for a class about Zen Buddhism. That's really freaky to me. But anyway, because it's not on my transcripts, I don't know what year I took it. But anyway, it's been at least 43 years. Let's say I started when I was 19. So I've been doing it a long time. Now, I wouldn't have kept up doing a daily Zazen practice every day for 43 years, pretty much every day. I mean, there's like a handful of exceptions where I haven't done it, but you know, I don't know, 20 days out of the last 43 years, maybe I've skipped. I don't know. That's actually a generous estimate by my calculations. But anyway, every damn day, you know, who knows how many days, how many hours that is. I wouldn't have kept it up this long if there were no benefits at all to the practice. this is something I seem to have intuitively understood when I first started learning Zazen from my teacher, my first teacher, who had himself been doing Zazen since he was, I think he said he was 12 or 13 when he first started, maybe 14, in his early teens. And he learned it from a Japanese visiting priest or something who'd come to the school that he was working, or he was going to at the time. Anyway, so he'd done it a long time, and he hadn't given up on it. You know, in his case, it would have been 30 years or so by then, or 20 some years. I don't know. It's been a while. So I could see that. And Nishijima Roshi, he used to always like to say he'd been doing Zazen for, was it 60 years or 70 years by the time, maybe 60 by the time I met him, but maybe more like 70 or 80 years by the time I stopped, well, by the time he passed away anyway. So he was doing it every day too. So nobody would do it, this hard practice, this difficult practice, for as long as a lot of us have been doing it, if there were no benefits. So obviously there are benefits. And I'll even tell you a few. One of the great benefits, which I struggle to, it's hard to say this in such a way that it really has, okay, let me just say it. I learned that my thoughts are just thoughts, and I don't have to believe them. In fact, I rarely believe my own thoughts anymore. Now, when you hear that as a philosophical proposition, which I probably heard some variation of that right from the first time I ever did, first time I ever encountered the practice, it doesn't sound like much. I don't think it sounds like much. But after, it took about 10 or maybe even 15 years for that revelation to finally sink in. And one day I was just like, oh, that's just thought, and I don't have to believe it. It was striking. And I guarantee you that there are many, many people out there watching this video right now who may think that they don't believe their thoughts, or they don't think their thoughts are just thoughts, but you do. And once you figure out in a really visceral sense that your thoughts are just thoughts and you don't have to believe them, that I think really reduces one's suffering in this life, because I think a lot of our suffering in this life comes from our own thoughts. Now, what I was trying to express in that previous video about suffering is people expect this kind of, there's all this hype in Buddhist circles about the overcoming of suffering, and you expect you won't feel any pain anymore, or you won't feel any sorrow, or you won't feel any sadness, or blah, 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 blah. No, that isn't the way it works. What happens is you have those feelings, but in my case, I don't believe them anymore. I mean, I sometimes, because I'm not a perfect, saint, martyr, or whatever, guru or whatever, I sometimes fall back into believing my own thoughts, but it never lasts for very long. And I realize that I was, in the first part of my life, in the grip of my own thinking process, and it was very difficult to get free. So that makes a huge difference. Now, I've also talked about some of the sort of mystical experiences I've had, and I'm not going to do that again because I feel like maybe I should never have talked about that in the first place, because it gets people all kinds of weird ideas. But I have had these kind of insights which were very meaningful and very important. In fact, my friend Shozan Jack Haubner did a video all about this, which I linked to last time, but I'm going to link to it again in the comments or the description below. And you can hear what he has to say about that, because I think he says it better than I can. But those revelations were important. I remember one of the really striking things that happened to me, and I wrote about this in one of my books, but I forget which one, so I don't remember. People ask me to find things in my books, and I don't remember what's where in my books or which books they're in. But anyway, there was one point where I goofed up really bad at Tsuburaya Productions. They were trying to keep the design of the new Ultraman character that they were about to launch a secret. Nobody told me that. I wish they would have. And we got these postcards that are what are they called? Oh God, I forget. There's a name for these kind of postcards that Japanese people send out on New Year's Day, and the post office actually holds the cards so that they only get delivered on January the 1st, right? So they printed out a bunch of these cards with the new Ultraman picture on them. And I sent him to some friends of mine in America who were Ultraman fans, and one of them put him up on his website. And now it was on the website, and now the secret design of the new Ultraman, which kind of looked pretty much like the old Ultraman, to be honest. I think even Hiroshi Maruyama, who designed it, would admit that. Anyway, it became quasi-public. I managed to, I called the guy up in whatever the middle of the night it was in his time, because I was calling from Japan. And I got him to take it off the internet, and the problem was okay, but I had to have this big meeting with everybody, like all the higher-ups of the company, and me standing, and then this horseshoe-shaped circle of all the higher-ups in the company, like berating me and getting angry at me for doing this. And it was really a big deal, because if I lost that job, that was all my life. At that point, I'd been living in Japan for, God knows, 7 years or something like that. I had no plans of leaving at that point. And so my life was all tied up in Japan, and without the job, I wouldn't have a visa, and then without the visa, I'd have to go. So this was a big deal. But I remember I had this meeting was set up they told me about this meeting in the morning, and they set it up for the afternoon just to make the suspense even worse. And I remember eating my lunch, as I always did, and this meeting was going to happen right after lunch, and going, oh, it's just a thing. The other thing it makes that Zazen revealed to me is that the very same, whatever it is, we don't like to put too much of a fine point on what it is, whatever it is that looks out through your eyes is the very same thing that looks out through my eyes and looks out through Kazuo Tsuburaya's eyes and Kiyotaka Ugawa's eyes and Koichi Takano's eyes and Kazuho Mitsuda's eyes, all the people I had to face that day, and looks out from Donald Trump's eyes and whoever's eyes and your dog's eyes and your cat's eyes and the spider in the garden's eyes. It's the same thing. Understanding that all of these people I was facing were actually the same me as the me that was facing them just changed the whole tone of the thing. And it's probably why I don't even remember how I answered their questions. They're firing this stuff away at me in Japanese rapid fire, and I'm trying to field these questions about why I did this terrible thing and how serious it was. It's probably why I got through it and didn't get fired. So there's a benefit of Zazen for you. But the thing is, a lot of people want to be sold on the practice of meditation. It's a big deal, and that's why it's so commercial these days. And I even pulled up at random, I just looked up benefits of meditation, and I got a page right away that told me, here's what it does. It helps manage stress, it helps with emotional healing, it can help you control anxiety, improves natural focus, increases self-awareness, gives you better energy levels, fights addictions, improves sleep. Anyone is capable of achieving the mental and emotional benefits of meditation if they dedicate their efforts to it, etc., etc. I would say all of that. All that's true. All that is true of my Zen practice. It did all those things. But there is a reason that the Zen project, as my commenter called it, chooses not to emphasize this, and chooses to say things like Kodo Sawaki's famous saying, Zazen is good for nothing. It's because if you go into it expecting these benefits and looking for these benefits, you're going to miss the practice itself, because you're going to keep measuring the practice against what you think it ought to do. And you're going to keep measuring yourself against how you think you ought to be because of your practice. And you're going to get frustrated. And I can tell you that because I got frustrated with Zen practice, especially when I was first going into it, because my teacher, being a Zen person, wasn't, hyping me on the benefits of meditation. But but they were around, I heard them. They were in the culture, in the zeitgeist already, and I expected something to happen. I expected enlightenment, I expected some kind of something to happen. And I got frustrated, like, why the hell am I doing this? It's boring, it's not fun, it's kind of tedious, it's actually, the old phrase, staring at a wall, watching the paint dry. That's what you're doing in Zazen practice. So if I'm not getting any benefits and I still feel stressed out, but the thing that happened with me was this. Like I said, those 20 odd days or whatever it was that I didn't do Zazen, those were probably mostly top loaded into the beginning of my practice. And I would get frustrated with it, and I would just kind of be like, because I wasn't so committed. I wasn't like seeing myself, I'm a Zen guy, and I'm a Zen Buddhist now, and I do Zazen. Hello. One of these people who wears Birkenstocks and tells people that they meet at parties, I'm into meditation, and tries to pick up chicks that way or whatever. I wasn't one of those guys. I was doing Zazen because it seemed to help. Every time I would quit doing Zazen because I wasn't getting the benefits I expected, then the noise level and the tension and all these things that they have in this, the benefits of Zazen, the sort of opposite of all those things, tension and stress and noise level and lack of focus and bad sleep and all this, would start to accrue and get bigger and bigger and bigger until I'd finally go, oh yeah, the thing I'm not doing now is I'm not doing the Zazen, so I better get back to that. So I got back to it, and the benefits were not astonishing, but over time they become more astonishing. But we don't talk about this because we don't want people to get lost in all of that, because they do get lost in all of that, and I got lost in all of that, so I know this is a factor in the practice. If your practice is to be in the moment, which is one of those other phrases that everybody throws around, then you got to be in the moment. And being in the moment means not worrying about what the benefits you're going to get and not worrying about results. Nishijima Roshi's translation of Muda Madhyamaka Karika, the fundamental wisdom, the middle way, which I helped him work on, he gets really into this idea of there are no results. So you can buy that book from Monkfish Books if you want. It's still in print and it's still around. It's called The Fundamental Wisdom of the Middle Way, and not to be confused with Jay Garfield's book of the same title, which there's a whole story behind why they have the same title. I don't want to get into that, but it's the one by Brad Warner and Gudo Nishijima. Goes into why there is no such thing as a result. A result, just to give you the TLDR version, is when you compare what you are at this moment to your memory of the past. And this has even been a factor in my illness, because when I think about, people will ask me, how's your pain level compared to where it was 3 weeks ago? And the question becomes, because I've been steeped in the Zen practice so long, it becomes very abstract. I know, because I have some memory, I'm not so old that I've lost my memory completely. I have some memory of those days when I was sitting over, you can't see the couch, but I was sitting over on that couch there, and basically all I could do all day was sit on that couch, and get up if I had to go to the bathroom, but that was difficult. And I was in incredible pain. But it's hard to even remember what that was like. I don't want to go through it again, and I'll avoid going through it again. But it's hard to even remember what it was like because it's abstract, because it's comparing my condition at this moment with a memory of the past. And that memory, I have also seen, this is another one of the benefits of Zen practice, that memory is deceptive. You think you remember all kinds of things from your life, but you don't really. You've invented a bunch of stories. And this is another one of these things that's in the cultural zeitgeist these days, that people say this all the time. But the practice of Zazen somehow does this magic something that makes it so clear, it's like a slap in the face. You just go, oh, my memories are not reliable. Because my memories are, once again, just thoughts, and I don't believe my memories. I mean, I believe them to a certain extent, but I don't put any absolute faith in my memory. I don't put any absolute faith in any idea that comes into my head. It's just another thought. So yes, there has been some difference in suffering. I am pretty sure that this current medical condition that I have these days, watch one of my previous videos if you want to know what it is. I don't like talking too much about it. It's pretty bad. It's extremely serious. It's probably one of the most serious diseases that's known to mankind. And I don't know if I'd have been able to get through it without the Zen practice. I have mentioned how I saw that I had to have total acceptance of my condition. I don't think I could have achieved any sort of total acceptance of my condition without having done 40-odd years of Zazen practice beforehand. I do think there's a difference. Now, the thing is, the difference between Zen's approach and the approach of other guys, other people, other meditation practices is mostly, I think, one of the biggest differences is in that idea of not having a goal, in the idea of forgetting about a goal, in the idea of saying it's good for nothing. If you want to go, it's a free country or a free world, wherever you happen to be. Maybe not a totally free world, but you're probably free to go pursue some other meditation practice. Back where I used to live in Los Angeles, there was some kind of a group, some kind of Buddhist group that had they had a place on, oh God, Highland? Was it Highland Boulevard? It doesn't matter. Anyway, they had this big place and they had these posters all over in front of it, giant, maybe like billboard-sized things that would tell you about the benefits of meditation, how much benefit you could get from going to their place and doing their practice. If you want to go try that, be my guest. One of the things about Zen that I like most about it is there's no proselytizing. There's no salesmanship involved. I'm not trying to sell this to you. Somebody the other day left a comment saying, whatever I'd said, the thumbnail or something could be misunderstood, but you don't seem to care that people might misunderstand you. And I don't really, I don't, because I realize that a certain portion of the audience is going to misunderstand anyway. Some will misunderstand because I'm not saying it right or conveying it very well, and that's my fault. But a lot of them will misunderstand because they just don't want to understand, because they want something else. And if you want something else, go find something else. That's what I loved about my two Zen teachers, is they were perfectly fine if you just walked out. They didn't care. They weren't trying to sell you anything. And that, I think, is another really great aspect of the approach. So, yeah, to conclude, I wouldn't have been doing this for 40 odd years if it had no benefits at all, if it didn't change my approach to suffering at all. I wouldn't be doing it. And I do feel after, I look at what other sort of meditation things advertise and religions advertise, and I go, yeah, I can kind of see through that. That's another one of these benefits is at some point in this practice, I became really easily able to see through any sort of claims like that. I'd be like, oh, you're just lying. Because I can see, because it's that whole thing about the same thing that's looking out through your eyes is looking out through my eyes, and I can see when you're just full of crap. So you can start to see when people are full of crap, and you can start to see how full of crap you are, which is very important. Okay, I hope that answered the question. I don't know. I've gone on for 20 odd minutes, so that's probably long enough. If you wanted... Oh, wait a minute. I wanted to show you my shirt. Let's see. One of my German friends will probably have to say it's from Hogan's Heroes, and it's saying something like, I see nothing, I know nothing, which Sergeant Schultz used to say on Hogan's Heroes. Okay. If you want to donate to me buying more new funny shirts and also buying food for Ziggy and myself and everything else, you can go to the URL that you're about to see on the screen below, or that you're about to hear if you're listening to the audio version, which is hardcorezen.info/donate. That is hardcorezen.info/donate. That's where you'll find links to my PayPal and my Patreon accounts. Those are my only way of making a living right now, and I appreciate your support, but as always, you don't got to support me if you don't want to support me. All right, we will see you next time. Have a good time all the time. Don't suffer. Bye. Hey, Ziggy. How you doing, cutie? You having a nice sleep? All right. I'll let you sleep a little bit more. Look at those big eyes. Talk to you later, Ziggy. Bye.